Welcome to the blockchain breakout session by Nathan Windsor. Nathan is the CFO Blockwatch Data and CEO Volta Market. You're welcome, Nathan.
I didn't they claimed to make applications that ran themselves that could basically be unstoppable applications that couldn't be taken down or couldn't be censored. And so that was the initial draw for me. I had never understood that, and I wanted to get into learning about that. So being in New York, I mean, it's sort of the central hub of, there are a couple big hubs of crypto and blockchain, and New York is one of them. So I went to a lot of early meetups to learn. And then I started to understand about the monetary systems and about how the dollar is created and what the dollar is about, and what that means in terms of wealth inequality and how it relates to opportunities to get access to capital. And in many ways, the new creation of digital assets have helped other people get in and get access to capital where they had no access before. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes sense. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, what can you tell us about blockchain? What various ways can we use blockchain?
So the only reason you really need to use blockchain is where there is no trust. When two parties don't trust each other, that's the main use case. So like one really great example of this is tracking how assets are made, like how your food is made, where your clothes come from, how under what conditions were they made, like who was making them, were they treated well, or were they slaves, and what was the carbon impact of the product that you're building. These type of like asset tracking this type of asset tracking information is really, really valuable because it's hidden from us as it is, and we don't know like where my shirt was made and under what conditions. So blockchain is useful for solving issues where there's no trust. Money is one of those, but you've seen, I mean, you guys are like the whole graveyard of initial coin offerings where they didn't work. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Thank you very much for that. Just a second, everybody, please, if you have any question, you can please send your question to the chat.
Yeah.
I will be reading them, and Nathan also will be checking through to see question I will be answering. So feel free to ask any question you want about blockchain, and he would answer every one of them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What I'm curious, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to see if there is any question already. But do you have any other thing you can tell us before the questions come in?
What is blockchain? How does the blockchain thing work? All right. Well, all right, I will get into it. So a blockchain, I should just rap for you. Because I wrote a blockchain rap to explain it to everyone. So a blockchain is basically a chain of blocks that are linked together with transactions. And a blockchain is just a write-only database. It's a database that can only be written to. So you can never edit the history of it, which is really kind of critical to the whole discussion here. So like the blockchain that everybody knows is Bitcoin. Great, here's some great questions. So the first like big blockchain that everyone knows about is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin came out about 12 years ago, right after the 2008 crisis, directly in response to how the Federal Reserve of the U.S. was treating the bailouts. So the idea of Bitcoin is that it's secure, number one, and that you can't make more of it. It's a fixed cap supply. So there's only a limited amount of Bitcoin you can have, and the minute that Bitcoin loses its security, it becomes worthless. And the reason that it becomes worthless is because you don't want to be able to make more of it, because then it will devalue it, right? Like something like gold, that is a good example. So a blockchain is just a database that you can only add to. And it's a database that's public, so you can go on and you can look at all of the transactions that have ever happened in time. So to all the people who think that you can launder money through Bitcoin, or you can do illicit things, it's actually really easy to find because it's all public, and you can sort of search for all the transactions. Do you want me to go into how miners work? So let me just look at these other questions. Why are governments systematically fighting the relevance of blockchain? Great, I'd love to answer this. Governments are systemically fighting the relevance of blockchain because they are nervous, because they understand that their power will evaporate if it gets decentralized. So the idea of a government is that it's a centralized institution that maintains power. And when you a blockchain, in some respects, is a way to decentralize the power. So the reason that, I don't know if you guys have been following it, but Facebook launched a project called Libra, which is its own digital cryptocurrency. And the reason that it really pissed off the banks and and the government is that Facebook has more financial data on its users than banks do. And that's really, really valuable for things like how to issue credit cards to people, how to issue, and all of the data that they have is just way more valuable to determine credit worthiness than any bank. And also when people start using their own currencies, when like local currencies have always been a really big part of the middle class. So for instance, when in the 14 to 16, 1700s, there have been a lot of, there were a lot of small like cities that had their own local currencies. And when those disappeared, it consolidated power in the hands of a few assholes, basically, who controlled everything. And so without access to like one really great use case of what I'm talking about with crypto is local digital currencies, because a currency that is owned by a group of people rather than a small group of people, like owned by the people who are using the currency, the currency can be optimized for velocity of exchange, which means how fast the money can change hands, like for buying goods or for buying services, rather than our current system, which our current system is just all the money is kept at the top. And most people don't have money because it's kept in the top. Or the way our system is designed is that the capitalism system that is designed, it's designed for that. And so that type of system is broken in systems like crypto and blockchain. So the other reason that governments, just to go into what Thais Salimi said, the other reason that governments fear it, well, take a look at China, by the way. China's issuing its own state-backed cryptocurrency. And there's no reason that they won't. Because they control a user's private keys. And if you disagree with the Chinese government, you turn off that person's key and they no longer have access to money. So let me just go into private keys a little bit. That I don't know what everyone's because there's some really basic questions here. So private keys, there's like your key to your door. And if you lose your private key, you can't get into your house. And in your house is all your money and all your stuff. So your private key is how you access your money in a blockchain system. And a lot of the problems that have been going on in, at least in terms of security breaches, hacks, have all been about poor private key management. So when you get into, when you buy Bitcoin, when you buy Ethereum, when you buy anything, you have to be very aware of how you're keeping your passwords and how you're keeping your private keys. So let me just bring that around to the government thing. When China is issuing its own state-backed cryptocurrency, like a digital sovereign currency, they will do that because they can control it, and they can control who has it and who doesn't have it. They can see where it is. It's much easier to launder money if you're using cash than it is if you're using crypto. It's way like you have to be basically a genius to figure out how to launder your money with crypto. But like with cash, you just operate a cash business and you never pay taxes. So that's let me see what else we got here. Can you tweet about your experience, how blockchain can be utilized in law practice? So blockchain can be utilized in law practice with the idea of a smart contract. So a smart contract, at least in the land of Ethereum, is a programmatic contract. So once two parties sign, it becomes law. And if you Google open law, that's a consensus project that's been in the blockchain law space for a while. The other really big legal blockchain kind of crossover is a company called Materium. I'll put this in the chat. Here's Materium, and then open law consensus. So Materium is digital asset tracking. So right now it's just mostly focused on art, but what they're solving for is they're solving for the legal issues that arise between two parties. And the way that they're doing that is by basically, so our legal system is based on a system called a Ricardian like contract. And so what they've done is they've basically taken in all of the old system of law across a bunch of different jurisdictions, and they've digitized them, and they've kind of automated mediation. They've automated how when conflict arises with an insurer, like with an insurance company, they've automated how that process will be mediated with court. So for the legal scholars and people interested in law, check out Materium and check out Open Law. How can blockchain be applied to healthcare? Great question. So I'm working with, actually there's one, let me just find the name. There's one, AFIA record. Yeah, let me just find this here. Yeah, so AFIA record, I will put this in the chat. So this is a great example of blockchain in healthcare that's going on in Africa. They are doing, they're doing an EHR, basically a database of EHR, electronic health records. And they have 7 million people in Africa signed up right now. So the main use case of blockchain, because the healthcare system our current healthcare system is designed specifically to screw the patients, and it's designed to make as much money as they can from the insurers, and to give as little service as they can to the actual patients, and to pay for it as little as they can. The whole incentives on the healthcare system are completely criminal because of the way that it's designed. So currently, most people don't even own their own data. And so just the idea of you owning your health records and you determining who gets to see and who gets access to your health records, that alone can be used all throughout healthcare. The incentive, and also to like align the incentives around data sharing. So healthcare is a pretty big topic right now in our world because COVID is basically ravaging us as a world, in particular the U.S., because we're completely ignorant and our presidents are racist and a fascist, and they don't actually believe in like facts, which makes it really hard to treat a disease if you don't believe in it, and if you don't tell your people that this is reality. So in the case of COVID, like the CDC and the WHO, like the companies that are supposed to be looking out for our health, they don't even have very reliable data, and there's very little way to verify the data. So and there are data silos. Like drug companies have their own data, governments have their own data, and people have data, and they're all unwilling to share with one another because we have very bad data practices, number one, and like people's data will be hacked and lost. And also the value that you have as a company, you're not incentivized to share with other people because then you're giving out your own, you're basically losing money. So what's being designed now, especially by Consensus Health, are data sharing systems, federated learning systems, where you give particular permission to different entities to learn as much as they can about the data without owning the data and without revealing what the data is. So this gets into something called zero knowledge proofs. I'm going to send this, it's also called ZK snarks, zero knowledge proofs. So zero knowledge proofs are basically understanding what the content is without understanding everything about it. So you know that a transaction happened, you just don't know what was inside the transaction, which is basically a secure way of sharing data between two parties without letting anyone else see. But those two parties can share with the network that yes, we've shared this data. Let me just look in the. What's the best roadmap for anyone who wants to be a blockchain developer with no prior coding skills? You have to learn JavaScript. There are so many online resources to learn JavaScript. You can learn on YouTube for free. With no prior coding skills, there's so many online courses. Just learn a basic coding course and learn as much as you can. And then also, like, there's so many great resources, lynda.com, Coursera, Udemy, I'll put this here. Let me see so that's the thing for coding skills. Also, all of blockchain stuff is open source, so you can learn at your own pace. You can learn whatever you want, and there's so many. There's also a lot of really interesting African companies that are already in the blockchain space. Salo being one of them. I'll put that here. So let me look at some of these questions. Great, this guy's actually knows. Now considering the consensus protocols that exist for several blockchains, is there any current consensus protocol that doesn't involve incentivization using coins and tokens, especially as a private blockchain? Yes. Avalanche is one of them. I'm working with this group, Ava Labs. So let me just, and if there is, then how would decentralization be possible since there is no means of incentivization? Would this mean that for every public blockchain, there will always be tokens? That's a really interesting question. So let's step back here. There are, for the last 30 odd years or so, there've been basically two different types. There's basically been one type of consensus, which was called classical consensus. and classical consensus is basically used in Paxos. Facebook's Libra has classical consensus, and it's a consensus that's achieved among parties for basically 100% accuracy, 100% accuracy, and so you, I think there we go. Another type of consensus is Nakamoto consensus, which is what's used in Bitcoin and Ether, like Satoshi Nakamoto, who was this pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin. So Nakamoto consensus is very, very slow, but it's very secure. And so we've had these two types of consensus algorithms. But for recently, we've had a new one, which is called Avalanche. And Avalanche is a different type of consensus. And it does not actually require, it doesn't require a token to secure. It actually just finds, it's a metastable algorithm, which means that it's weighted towards one decision or another, which is critical in how fast you make choices. It's a really kind of long topic, and judging by the crew that were here, I'm going to sound like a total freak and a nerd if I go too deep into consensus algorithms. I mean, you can email me and maybe we can chat offline about it, or I can send you resources. But Ava Labs is a great resource to learn about consensus algorithms. They're out of Cornell University. Let me look at some of the other questions. Do you also have materials on blockchain? Yeah, I'm sharing the materials I have on blockchain with everyone in the group. What's the best roadmap? Okay, will the creation of more cryptocurrencies devalue the top ones like Bitcoin and Ethereum? A really interesting. My thought is no. I think that what we're going to see is, if we're successful in as a group of people around the world in creating digital currencies, we're going to see more local currencies that are optimized for specific countries and specific needs, and that Ethereum and Bitcoin are not designed for that. They're just like, Bitcoin will never work for that. It's not a store of value, as we've seen over the last couple of months. But I think the best way I can sort of talk about this is that there are Bitcoin maximalists and there are Ethereum maximalists who are like ultra orthodox, like Bitcoin is the only answer, or Ethereum is the only answer, or Ripple or whatever is the only answer. And a lot of this is just total nonsense, garbage, because of the, number one, because of the consensus algorithm that it uses, and also number two, because there are existing problems that are still not being solved with Bitcoin and Ethereum. I mean, we can't operate a global economy on proof of work. The mining systems are it's just nonsense, and it gets into like a religious belief system about Bitcoin, which is irrelevant to the fact that these people can't eat or they can't trade. So I think more and more people will understand, like, there's going to be a US Fed coin at some point. We just don't know when. As soon as China releases a cryptocurrency, everyone in the world is going to be like, oh shit, they're ahead of us. We have to issue our own now. Why don't we have this? Why don't we have control over our money supply? This is the scenario that's sort of going to happen after China issues its own crypto. And it will start the conversation among people. What do you think we can learn from your reality, and what can you learn from ours? Great question. That's why I actually wanted to learn more about what's going on in Nigeria. Our reality in New York is very, very skewed. Our reality here is very, very weird. My cat keeps trying to jump on the table. Our reality is very skewed. We have a system here. I mean, like, you can see, like look at the way America right now is going up in flames because of the ignorance of our leaders and the racism of our leaders and the greed. The fucking greed is unbelievable when you see that $500 billion bailout goes to businesses that we don't even know, that aren't even disclosed to us. Like people we just don't understand how to function in a system that doesn't reward greed. And I mean, I looked at, I read up on the history of Nigeria and like all of the colonization that took place through the British Empire for so many years. And that like, that is America also, because America has been doing that across nations for forever. And, you know, we have never really supported a free Africa, a free African continent and African countries there. We have constantly, our government has constantly been assassinating democratically elected presidents in Africa, continually. You know, when I was asked to speak at the conference, like I've done some research, and there's a huge amount of innovation that's going on in Nigeria, mostly because it's the largest economy there. It's the most populous country. Nollywood is huge. The music industry is huge, and there's a lot of people who want to change the way the system's working. And currently you can see that in the States in the Black Lives Matter movement, which is pushing towards police abolishment and a renegotiation of how policing is done. And all of these things relate to decentralization, and the fact that if you concentrate power in a few people's hands, it gets completely out of control. I mean, just look at our inability to cooperate as a global species in climate change. I went out on a tangent there. Let me just sort of get back to the questions here. I invested in Ethereum million money blockchains last month, but I'm finding it difficult to get down liners and referrals. I don't know what that means. How do we mine cryptocurrency? Okay, cool. So mining is basically a version of validating. You're validating transactions that
Cock and ball torture from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. .org. Cock and ball torture, CB, is a sexual act involving torture of the male. This may involve.
Thank you. Fuck that guy. Crazy. Okay, how do we mine cryptocurrency? Cryptocurrencies are by validating. So there's a proof of work system and there's a proof of stake system, which basically means that you're proving to the network that you have either staked money on network, or you have staked money in the form of GPUs. Right now, Bitcoin and Ethereum are proof of work, which means that GPUs are used to validate the transactions. And proof of stake, like in Tezos, proof of stake is, well, here, let me put a link to this. Proof of stake is done by basically delegating your money to validators who are using algorithms, a different algorithm to validate transactions. What's the biggest lesson I've learned since venturing into blockchain? Greed follows everywhere. I've never seen such stupidity and such greed, and also such innovation at the same time. You should Google the recent scandal that happened in Estonia. There was a $220 billion scandal, which was basically laundering money through Estonia, which was sold to Estonia was sold to the world and sold to us as the crypto haven. And we find out that they were laundering huge amounts of money, that actually banks were laundering money through it. Big surprise. But there are other lessons, which is like understanding how our monetary system works and how deeply corrupt that system is. And then also like understanding that we as a general species together are experiencing a lot of the same problems across countries, and people, at least our governments specifically, don't have a solution. And so they're going to need us to build them. I don't know. Let's see. What would you, can I hear some of well, all right, what advice would you give to young Africans and Africa as a continent on how to leverage blockchain to become a developed continent? Well, that's a really interesting question. I think the word developed is misleading. We are what's in the US, we're known as a developed country. And if you can see by the way we treat our poor people and our people of color, we're not very developed. We're not developed empathetically. We're not developed emotionally. We're not developed enough to acknowledge the fact that our country was built on slavery, and we have not even acknowledged that deeply enough to understand how it affects the lives of our current people of color. So, I mean, a developed nation, in my view, is one that has a developed emotional system and a developed healthcare system and a developed legal system. And currently, all of those in our country have gone out the window. So what you can learn from us is what not to do. We are just fucking up massively right now, and we need help. We need like a rehab. We need to check into rehab. And some of the things that, a lot of the problems that exist cannot be solved with blockchain. Like, you know, if we're gonna, there are some problems that can be solved, like the healthcare, a lot of the healthcare problems can be solved with proper data sharing and with good security and with good federated learning models. It doesn't necessarily need to be solved with crypto or blockchain, and the carbon in our environment, the problems that we face globally, like all of us, is climate change. And we all face nuclear war, and the possibility of nuclear war, and we're all facing technological disruption. So right now we have 40 million unemployed people in the States who are completely screwed. And unless we pay for them somehow with a basic income, they're going to starve. And and we're going to see this kind of accelerate, because there's no way that these people can retrain to become blockchain developers within a week or within 2 weeks, or virtual reality programmers. I mean, you know, these are larger issues at hand, which is we cannot solve these issues as a single nation. Like we need, like I would personally look more to Nigeria and to other African countries to like explain to us what's going on for them. I know, for instance, that there's a great green wall being built across the continent to stop the spread of the Sahara Desert, which is going to damage huge amounts of land and growing food. So like one of the things that we have to, like the thing that we have to figure out together as a group of people is the supply chain of food and the supply chain of goods, and how that's going to change over the next 10 or 15 years as our climate changes, as our climate shifts. How are we going to navigate the fact that all of these people are out of work and they don't have access to capital? One solution is, well, they have access to a local digital currency which provides them access to goods. I mean, there's been a whole host of academic research on local currencies over the years. For people who don't have access to capital, that's very useful. So, you know, also coming up with a a legal system that doesn't imprison poor people. It doesn't have anything to do with blockchain. Like it has to do with human rights, and we have to evolve our thinking as a group of people to understand that poverty should not be criminalized. All right, let me get back into blockchain here. Yeah, I'll give out my email address to the folks. Just email them and I'll get my email to them. Let's see. 5 new messages. I have 10 more minutes left. What cryptocurrency in the blockchain system do you foresee would accrue large market cap in the next 5 years? I'm all in on Avalanche. I think they're the most promising group out there right now. You can have a look into Ava Labs. They were invested by Andreessen Horowitz 1.5 years ago, and they're doing really well. So I'm super excited about Avalanche. Why do you think people pay too much focus on cryptocurrency and refuse to pay the same attention to other applications of blockchain? Because money, people are greedy. There are lots of applications of blockchain, like tracking digital assets, counterparty risk, decentralized exchanges, self-sovereign identity, but people really understand money, and people don't understand what the hell I'm talking about when I say those other words. So if you can attract someone for the chance that they make money, I'm fine with that. How do I get my updates? CoinDesk is really good. Crypto Twitter, like all of Twitter, I generally find that there are huge amounts of trolls all over Twitter, and it's just a lot of fucking garbage. But a lot of the key researchers in the space, I follow those people. Let me put some of the links here. Hacking Distributed is a really good resource. I'll put that here. And that has a lot of the great researchers all linked into Hacking Distributed. I want to invest in blockchain, not just cryptocurrency. What is your advice? If you want to invest in blockchain, just start an account and buy $10 worth of everything you can, and be prepared to watch it evaporate. But if you buy a small amount, you'll at least have an incentive to learn about it, and you'll have an incentive to understand what it means by keeping your keys private. So yeah, to Taye Salami, yeah, Salami, I would say that updates like CoinDesk, Smith and Crown, and then following actual researchers rather than people just trying to shill coins to you. Usually if someone is pumping Ethereum, they're probably long Ether, and you don't know what the hell's going on. Actually, I'm not sure what the main exchanges to buy crypto are in Nigeria. I think Busha Exchange is one. I think you can buy there, and I think there are a couple other as well. How do you make sense of all the information overload? Yeah, meditation. There's a lot of bullshit out there, and also, like, if your own brain can't handle the information overload, you take some meditation. How do we build our blockchain infrastructure in Africa? We need to get more people into it. There are a lot of pre-existing blockchain companies in Africa. There are a lot of people working, so reach out to them. Reach out to companies who are already training developers. There are a lot of them, and get involved with those. A lot of the infrastructure should be owned by the people who are building it rather than large corporations, and so make sure you're involved with that type of company. What other questions do we have? What about people who are not, is there a way to merge AI and blockchain together? Yeah, so AI, there's a company called SingularityNET.io. I'll put that here. That's a good idea of a global AI network. Basically, a global AI network lets you build your own artificial intelligence and deploy it and get paid for it. I think after 1 or 2 questions, I can just round up. What about people who are not interested in being blockchain devs? That's totally fine. I think if you should, there's all this open source public research that's been that's just out there for you to learn. There's so much. Like, I would just start at Hacking Distributed. Like, it's such a good resource, and the people there are so talented. Olawale asked me what's my opinion on Libra. My opinion on Libra is that it's going to go forward because Facebook is its own nation state at this point. It's no longer even a corporation that can be controlled by the government in any meaningful way yet. That's my opinion. And I think they're going to go forward with it, and it's going to increase the general public's knowledge of crypto, and then that will probably, like, they'll get into Libra, and then they'll buy Bitcoin and Ether, and that's it could increase adoption generally. Yeah, I'm very bullish on Avalanche as well. Are there any other questions? Olawale, do you want to chime in? Do you want to unmute? How else can I be of service here?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I've been given the authority to continue with this session if there is still more question, and from you, if you still want to take more question. So I've been given the chance to prolong, to increase the number of time that we have on this session. So for example, if you want to start a career in blockchain, is there a particular roadmap or a particular way you have to follow if you want to start a career in blockchain?
Is there a roadmap that you need to follow to start a blockchain?
To start a blockchain career.
To start a blockchain currency.
A blockchain career, a career in
a career.
Yes.
Yeah, you either have to be on the business side, which is not code related, or you have to be on the code related side. In either case, you're going to need training. The best thing I can do is, if you want to be involved in it, just either start your own company or find a group of people who you trust that be a part of it, and then you have to do a huge amount of research first to understand what's actually working. Like, because there've already been like a bunch of failed projects inside and outside Africa in the blockchain space, and like, if you're going to start something, like, learn from those failures, because they were total failures, and it would be stupid to try to replicate something that didn't work. So understand what went first rather than reinvent the wheel. I don't have any online courses. There are so many good courses. Just go on to udemy.com. There's so many ways to learn. There's so many on YouTube. Just learning Ethereum smart contracts in JavaScript would be useful for you.
Nathan,
you can find me on Twitter. This is my handle on Twitter, and I just put my email in there as well.
So I would like to ask, what are the potential challenges or problems that you see blockchain to have?
I think the biggest problem is we're going to have to figure out how to track carbon. Tracking carbon is a direct threat to our entire ecosystem, and Materium has actually put forth a really interesting method to track carbon based on how goods are made. And they've done a huge amount of research into that. I'll put it in here. So those are, healthcare, climate, and local digital currencies.
So there is a question here from Taye Salami. What else do you offer apart from this very rewarding opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah, exactly.
What?
Probably Taye can give more clarity on that question.
What question?
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Really appreciate
About his question what do you offer apart from this very rewarding
Free money and songs. I'll sing songs about how stupid Americans are.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will tell you about Taye Salami. Taye Salami is like the project manager for this conference. So he would like to ask you some questions. So I will,
okay. So unmute him then, if he's
yes.
part of the conference.
Hello, Nathan. I think it's morning over there. Or afternoon. So good afternoon. So I decided not to be a host or co-host in another session because I wanted to hear you speak. So it's been an honor. Thank you for a wonderful session so far. So what I mean is, you've given us your email, and then I've just followed you. So the question of how to engage with you. So I'm really interested because I started investing in a few cryptocurrencies. So I'm all about building wealth long term, not just investing money and waiting for quick returns. So what I personally want to know for myself is, are you easily accessible to get tips on where to put my money or where to look for research and stuff like that? So I'll rather hear from someone I believe is an authority in the field. That's why I asked the question about the information overload. I've tried reading, but I've been unable to make real sense of what blockchain and cryptocurrency really is. I'm interested in the cryptocurrency part, but I'm more into I look forward into the blockchain. I'm really into that. Although I want to make money on the side. So that's why I'm asking if you offer way more than what you're doing right now.
Well, so the companies that I created and co-founded and we're working on are generally I just put a Twitter link into Eamon Goon Sire. He's one of the creators of Avalanche, and a lot of the things he says over time have been very, very accurate. So in terms of market price, everyone has their own opinions, but I've found that researchers generally who provide real academic math background fundamentals rather than fucking made up stuff about Ethereum or opinions is where to go to put your money. That's why I'm suggesting that if you one of the ways to cut through all the bullshit and all the marketing and propaganda about it is to really understand the technical fundamentals, and the only way to do that is to either learn yourself or to find the researchers who are doing that and then to follow them. One of the things that we're doing with Avalanche's work is we're using it to Avalanche's consensus model as a settlement layer for fractionalizing digital securities. So fractionalizing a stock, fractionalizing an ETF. And then one of the other companies I work with, Blockwatch, they're the main blockchain explorer for Tezos, which is one of the top 20 cryptos. And so we're building APIs for developers to understand the transactions that happen on chain there. I mean, if you want, I'd be glad to meet. We can do Zooms. We could chat periodically if that would help people. I guess I'm totally down to do that, or provide resources or call bullshit. Whatever you think would be useful, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. I think Taye says Zoom would be nice. I think we can work something on that. Probably get a little bit of blockchain enthusiasts together. That we can have probably periodic Zoom meeting, or we'll find a way to do that. I think I will work with Taye concerning that.
Well, yeah, it would be really great because I don't know the other presenters. I would love to meet the other presenters sometime and hear from them on all the projects that they're working on. my intent was to not be a sage on a stage. I want to find out what you guys are working on and help you out, like rather than give you what I'm doing. And I want to find out what's going on there.
I think that is a very, very valid, valid opinion. So, like I said, I'll work with Taye on that. I will get some people together to know what they are doing in blockchain.
Yeah.
Get back to you concerning that.
Yeah, the team at Busha Exchange is really talented, and that's how I got here anyway. They recommended I speak, and so reaching out to them would be really critical because they're the main blockchain company in Nigeria that I know.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you very much. I don't think there's any. Okay, Taye said he has a few contacts he would like you to meet.
Sure.
So probably you would have to probably send him a mail or link up with him on Twitter.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so I don't think there is any other question.
Okay.
So if there is no other question, I think we can say yes, we've done well. And
great. Well, thank you so much for your time, guys. I appreciate you letting me hear what is going on for you and letting me share how fucking sorry I am that our country is screwing the world right now. I am so sorry.
It's all right. I think the whole world are already getting over it a little bit, but we'll still keep on fighting for the rights of our people. It's necessary.
Yeah.
Yes. So we really thank you. People are already thanking you on the chat. So
wonderful.
I think we all enjoyed your session.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do something recurring, monthly, I'd be glad to work with you guys in the near term, whatever you need.
I would like to take you up on that.
Okay. Great.
So thank you. Thanks,
very guys. Much. Thank you. We'll be in touch. Yes. Ciao.
Yes. Okay.
Not saying anything now. This session that they're about to. Thank you very much. One last question. So there's this popular saying.
So guys, please.
You need to sell.
So guys, please, we should get back to the main Zoom webinar group. I will send the link there for the closing address for today so that we can know what's up for tomorrow. So this still continues tomorrow. There will be some other breakout sessions for us also. So I will send the link for those people who don't have the link to the general group. I will send it right now for you to get back there.